Hi, I'm Maybe Burke, and you're watching Makeup for Lost Time. This is my makeup series for trans women and other people who feel like they missed a few classes when it came to learning about makeup, or they're being left out of the conversations around makeup and beauty and want to learn more. Last week we talked about eyeliner pencils, and this week we're actually going to talk about liquid and cream liners. So we're still on the topic of eyeliner, but we're going to be looking at some different formulas that apply a little differently and give us a bit of a different finish and a lot more precision with our eyeliner. Now, before we dive in, I want to reiterate something that I said in last week's video about the reason I'm starting with eyeliners in application. And I'm starting with things that you can wear on their own. You don't necessarily need to do a full face of makeup to have a nice winged eyeliner on. You can, and I currently do have a full face, so we'll be seeing what it looks like on a full face, but you don't have to, and that's why I think it's helpful to start out with a couple of things that you can do or you can wear, and you don't need to go full glam every day in order to start putting a little bit of fun and a little flair into your everyday makeup look. We're also going through in order of how I introduce makeup into my own personal routine, and eyeliner is a big part of my relationship to makeup and my history with makeup. Like right now, I don't have any liner on. I have a little bit of mascara on that gives me kind of the edge on my lash line because of the way the pigment falls, but I don't actually need to wear liner all of the time. But historically, liner was kind of my first love with makeup, and a sharp wing is a thing that I really love to wear, even though it took me a while to learn how to keep a wing. My eyes tear a lot. I have really sensitive eyes in the cold, in the wind, in the sun, in weather. Every time I step outside, there's like a 50% chance, there's a 50% chance that my eyes are gonna start tearing. And so I've had to learn different placements and different ways of setting the liner in place to maintain an eye look or to maintain some eyeliner on my lid. It's also really important to name that you can just use liquid liner in a lot of the shapes and or cream liners in the shapes that we did last week. You can just go straight across your lash line, and you don't have to do a big wing if you're using a liquid liner. You can just use it on the lash line like things we did last week. You can use a lot of different things in a lot of different ways. You can also use a cream liner in your waterline and things like that. There are different ways that you can play around. Some things are a little higher skill level and might take a little more intentionality and might get a little messy if you don't know what you're doing. But we're going to do two different wing shapes today so that we can see what things look like. And one of them is going to actually be really helpful if you have hooded eyes. Hooded eyes being that if your crease kind of disappears when you have your eyes open, and I'm pushing down because my eyes aren't very hooded, but like when you don't have a lot of lid space when your eye is open, you see, like you can't really see my lid space there, where you can see it more on this side. So if your eyes are hooded, it's going to be harder to have a like bold liner on because a lot of it is going to get covered up by that hood. So we're going to do two different shapes, one of which is actually going to be really helpful if you are a person who has a hooded eye and struggles with finding a way to do eyeliner that shows up on your face and stays. And more so than eyeliner pencils, there's so many different kinds of liquid and cream and gel liners out there. There's the liquid liners that come in a pen and have kind of like a felt tip. Some also have more of a brush tip, but there's also ones that have a brush that kind of dips into the liner and the ink there, but it's really just a brush that comes up with the product on it. And then there's also some gel liners that are going to come in little pots like this, and you can use a brush in there. And then actually what I'm going to use for the second look today is going to be just like a pigment paint. And this is just black matte pigment that comes in a little tube. And then I'll use a flat angled brush to draw the liner on. And same as last week's conversation, there's a lot of different colors of liner that you can use. And choose your own adventure when it comes to those fun colors. I'm gonna use blacks for today because it's gonna show up the best and be the best demonstration, I think, to show you what they look like. But they make liquid liners in so many different colors these days, and you can really have fun with bold colors, or you can like outline in white on a black wing. There's so many different ways that you can play and have fun and use the different colors to express yourself and to show a little artistry. Now I'm going to start on my left eye, and I'm going to use a pen, and I'm going to just do like a standard cat eye wing. And this one from Rare Beauty is actually so smooth. It's like a calligraphy pen, and it honestly goes on almost too smooth, and it's hard for me to control. So I'm going to do my best, and we're going to do it together. The first thing I'm going to do is draw the wing where I want it to go, starting from my lower lash line. And I'm going to kind of continue the line where it's going to go. And you'll see I literally did press in a little bit there so that you see like where I want the line to go. And I'm using a compact so that I can look closely and have a mirror up close. Having a compact with me when I do my makeup for like anything I do on my eyes specifically has really helped to improve my makeup game recently. But I want to be looking straight ahead and just trace from where that lower lash line is. I'm going to trace a line out just like that. That's all I need right there. So when I relax my eye, you'll see it actually goes along the curve with that lower lash line a little bit. And then when I raise my eye, it's really going to give that like lifted cat eye look. But we want to make sure that we're doing something that's going to be a little lifted so that when I relax my eye, it's not going to droop down. It's not going to make my eye look downturned. It's going to always stay a little bit lifted or straight out. And so from there, I'm going to take another line starting kind of right in the center of where my pupil is. And I'm going to draw to connect to that other line. And it's okay if it's not perfect. We'll go back and fix that. So now we have a little outline, a little bumpy, a little messy. Your eyelid has a lot of skin and a lot of movable skin on it. So it's okay if the line is not exactly straight and perfect. We're going to go in and make sure that we kind of clean that up along the way. Now, I like this shape. So what I can do is just fill it in from there. And I'm just going to go in and see those spots that weren't perfect. I'm just going to take my time to make sure they're smoothed out. And that's a really subtle little wing. Now, if I look at this and I'm like, ooh, I actually want it to be a little more dramatic. I want a little more flair. I want it to be thicker. We really just have the singular line on its own out there. So I can connect from that line down. And so I'm going to take it from where that line was. And connect down like that. And there you see, it's kind of an even thickness that tapers out to that fine point. And then the last thing I'm actually going to do is just I don't go all the way to my inner corner, because the way that my eyes work, my inner corners, my tear ducts get really wet and break down the eyeliner. So I'll only start it about like a little bit in from the tear duct, but I'll actually go in and just make sure that the line goes all the way across my eye. Not all the way, but it goes mostly across my lash line with a fine line really close to the lash line. And that gives me the shape I want. This liner, I tested it and I really like how it lasts on its own. But if I don't trust it, or I want to like ensure that it's going to be long wear, or if I'm wearing a liner that doesn't last well on its own, one thing that I can do is take a flat angled brush, like we talked about in our tools video, and go in with a black eyeshadow and just draw over that same wing with a black shadow to kind of set the liner in place. I'm not going to draw a new shape or anything. I'm literally just going to press the eyeshadow powder in to where the liner already is. And now you might be thinking, oh, I could just do this whole shape with eyeshadow. And that's true. You could just use the flat angled brush and draw on. It won't have as much pigment because an eyeshadow is not going to be as heavy as a liquid or a cream is going to have. But you could draw this with any color of eyeshadow and make a cute look. It'll be a different aesthetic. It's going to be hard to get that sharp a point with that kind of a vibe. But I've done it. I do it, depending on the look you're looking for. Now from here, you also have the ability to go down on your bottom lash. There's a lot of ways you can use like graphic liner and make multiple lines and things like that. But that is your standard cat eye wing. Pretty simple. I actually didn't struggle too much with the liner, and I'm kind of proud of myself. Because I used this for the first time the other day and I was like, whoa, she is really, really fine lines, really easy glide on. And I was like, oh, I have to get better with my unsteady hand. Next, we're going to look at what is sometimes referred to as a bat eye. And it's going to give us a very similar shape. But when we have our eyes fully open and eyebrows raised like this, we're actually going to see more dimension in the line. And it's going to look more like a bat wing than it is going to look like just this simple cat eye here. And for this one, I'm going to use the pigment paint that I was talking about and the flat angled brush, just so we can see two different techniques. And there'll be a little more technique in this one because we're obviously going in for a more complex wing. Now, with the bat eye, very similar to how we started out with the cat eye, we're going to start following the line of our lower lashes, making sure our eyes are really relaxed. And we're just going to draw that line out. And I'm actually going bigger than the other one. I'm not worried about matching these because I'm showing you two different techniques today. But now, from there, instead of worrying about connecting all the way to the lash line like I did for the cat eye, what I'm going to do, you see where my eye is creasing? That kind of line that forms above the lash line is where that crease is. And if you have hooded eyes, that crease is going to be more significant. So what I'm going to do is actually draw the top of the wing just right into that crease. And I'm going to stop there. So we end up with this little kind of check. Yeah, it's like a sideways check mark. And what I'm going to do from there is actually close that little triangle in. And so I'm just going to draw a little line straight down, and then fill this in. And then what I get to do is take another line of the liner and just add it to our lash line. Similar how we would do the pencil liner last week. And then I can actually take it just from the end of the lash line, not all the way at the corner where the current line starts for the wing, but just before it. And I'm going to connect kind of to the bottom of that triangle that we made at the tip. And so you'll see now we basically have a little wing that connects to another wing that's a little further out. And then I'm just going to fill in the rest of the lash line. And here you'll see I'm actually just kind of stamping it on, little by little, and making sure it's where I want it to be. So now, the reason we call this a bat eye is because it does look a little bit like a bat wing, but when I relax my brow, it does look like a little cat eye because the fold of my eye is covering up all of that hidden mechanism. And this is a good way to make sure that we're not messing up. If our eyelids get oily, it's not going to mess up the liner as much. It's also not going to transfer onto the top of the hood of our lid and things like that. Of course, here, if we want to ensure longevity and things like that, we also can set that with a powder, making sure that we do that anytime we want to really increase longevity and make sure the liner is going to last us through the day if we're wearing things for long hours and things like that. This is a very basic interpretation of this, but there's a lot of different ways that you can play around with shape and with the different ways that you can kind of avoid the hood in your eye as you're putting the liner on. The last thing I want to look at, which is something I didn't cover when we were looking at pencil liners last week, but is also something you could do with a pencil. We put some pencil liner in our waterline of the lower lashes, but you also have the ability to just come in right under the lashes and put liner right under where the waterline is. And what's actually really fun is you can do this with a lighter color in the waterline as well to get some nice contrast. But this is why it's also helpful when your wing starts on the same line as your bottom lashes. Lining the bottom lashes is going to just elongate that shape. You can of course do that same thing over here. You could also take a little eyeshadow. You could also leave it alone. There's so many ways that you can play. These are two options of what you can do with some liquid liner, making sure that you're avoiding a hood if that is a problem for you or if it's a concern for you, and playing with some different thickness and intensities of just a classic wing. Of course, as I mentioned, you can also just do the straight across line like we did with the pencil liner. You can just do that with your liquid liner. You can play around with different things that work for you. The way that I learned most of my makeup application was trial and error. And this is where my transition and conversations about my journey with gender and my journey with makeup overlap often. I practiced my makeup a lot in the mirror when I was younger. And I would stay up late at night and practice and look at things that work in different ways and try different things out. And then I would take it all off and I wouldn't wear it the next day. But I kept practicing and I kept working at things and mastering my skills. So the more that you practice, whether or not it's in the morning before you go out, or if it's just when you're home alone and things like that, the more you practice, the better you're going to get. And the more you're going to learn your own eye shape. And if you need to avoid your hood when you're drawing a wing, or if you decide you actually don't like the way your eye shape looks when it has a wing, or if you decide that you have to actually go a little further up and not follow the line of your water line. I had to do that for a long time before I learned to set it with eyeshadow, because if my eyes would tear, if my liner wasn't going like really further up, I would cry it off. So finding what works for you is always going to be ideal, and everybody's skin is different, everybody's eyes are different, and different techniques are going to work on different people in different ways. I hope this little crash course on liner was helpful. If you have other questions about eyeliner, I'm happy to answer them. I'm currently not planning to do another whole video dedicated just to liner, but the future is vast and wide, and we can definitely continue answering these questions and talking about this as we continue to make up for lost time. But I do want to move on to other pieces next week and make sure that we get to other parts of your face as well. Thank you so much for all of the support for this series. I really appreciate you making up for lost time with me, and I hope that you have a wonderful Trans Day of Visibility that is this week. And if you are a person who is trans and watches these videos, know that all of the work that I do is for us and for you. And really proud to be able to have conversations like this that center trans women in particular in conversations that are so often leaving us out. If you're not a trans person, but you really enjoy watching these videos, I hope that you are also being very vocal in your support of trans people all of the time, especially at a time where we so desperately need it from other people. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.